Mr. Speaker, I got up this morning and called home, as I often do each day I'm here in Ottawa away from my family, as I'm sure many do. And I asked, what's the price of gasoline this morning? What's the price of diesel? And in my part of Ontario, just north of the GTA, it ranged from anywhere from about $1.65.9 to $1.75.9 for regular to around $2 for diesel fuel. Now that's in Uxbridge, Port Perry, Cannington, Beaverton in Brock Township, and of course Sutton and Keswick in Georgina, all in my riding, Mr. Speaker. So here we are. The reality is we have about $2 diesel and $1.75 gasoline in a country that sits on the fourth largest reserves of conventional and unconventional oil and gas. So what should be a time where Canada is benefiting from instability in the world, instead we are suffering because of it. The war in Iran has certainly caused a spike in oil prices and is part of the cause of what we're seeing at the pumps. But the other cause is, of course, self-inflicted. It's 10 years of policies by this government, whether it's old or new, regardless of what they call them. They've been consistent, at least, that they want to keep our resources in the ground, and they would rather see Canadians starve, freeze, and lose their jobs for some figment of an environmental ideology. And the result is that we have $2 diesel and $1.75 gasoline. Now, of course, we also don't have enough infrastructure. We don't have refineries. We don't have enough pipelines. We don't have one east to west. And so we can't even get our resources to our own people. And so that's why places in my part of the country and further east, instead of utilizing Canadian energy, are importing energy from places around the world that neither you nor I, Mr. Speaker, would want to vacation in. For example, Saudi Arabia, where, of course, women have no rights, but we are funding their regime to the tune of billions of dollars by importing their oil rather than consuming our own from Canadians who have hardworking jobs, high pay, and where our industries have high environmental standards. So, and on top of these policy choices, Mr. Speaker, what's worse in this whole situation is that we clobber Canadians with taxes. So we keep the resources in the ground, we buy higher at world prices rather than consuming our own, and to put insult to injury, we clobber Canadians with taxes on top of that. Now, depending where you live in this country, taxes on fuel will range anywhere from between 40 to 60-ish cents per litre. Now, that's combined federal and provincial taxes. So bear with me, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to go through them. It might take a while, but here we go. Provincial excise tax. Local consumer carbon taxes, if you're in certain parts of British Columbia. Transit taxes, again, if you're in certain parts of British Columbia. Provincial sales taxes, federal excise tax, federal sales tax, clean fuel regulations tax, and industrial carbon tax. Now, if you're keeping track, that was quite a list. But one of the ironies of all of these taxes, Mr. Speaker, is that the Liberals have, for months, called them imaginary. Every time I've asked a question on the clean fuel regulations or the industrial carbon tax, the government House Leader who just spoke will get up and say, these are imaginary taxes. Well, let's take two of them today that they have said are imaginary. The industrial carbon tax. This was and remains a flagship Liberal policy. In fact, if you go back and read their budget from the fall, it's mentioned at least 9 times. 9 mentions of the industrial carbon tax, and in fact a promise to increase that industrial carbon tax in the future. How imaginary indeed. Next, the clean fuel regulations or clean fuel standards tax. That's a real law, Mr. Speaker. It's not imaginary. You can go on the Justice Lob's website and look up the clean fuel regulations. And in fact, the government has a dedicated web page for those regulations. So those are anything but imaginary. So because of this uncertainty, because of the cost on families, we are today proposing as the Conservative Party, as the official opposition, to remove all of the federal taxes on fuel. Now, we have estimated that this will save Canadians about $20 every time they fill up at the pump and about $1,200 from now until the end of the year. And we would pay for that, Mr. Speaker, by using some of the profits that the government will reap in higher revenue from higher oil prices. Because, of course, we know as oil prices go up, provincial and federal governments take in more tax revenue. And we've estimated that we can pay for our proposal with about 5 of the approximately $9 billion that will be taken in higher oil revenues in this country. So it's, we're using existing resources. We're not adding to the debt or deficit. So we've suggested and proposed to remove 4 federal taxes, suspending the federal excise tax until the end of the year, suspending the GST on gas and diesel to the end of the year, and then eliminating both the Clean Fuel Standards regulation, the Clean Fuel Standards tax, and the industrial carbon tax. Now, in my view, all of these are necessary, Mr. Speaker. Each one by themselves is simply insufficient to provide any real relief to families. So I know the Prime Minister just a few moments ago this morning announced basically not even a half measure, maybe a 1/8 measure, where they are intending to remove only the federal excise tax and only until September. So let me put that into context here. Our plan, as we've proposed, would save about 25 cents a litre. What the Prime Minister has proposed today is just the federal excise tax, which is 10 cents per litre on regular gasoline and 4 cents per litre on diesel. So that's less than half of what we have proposed, and for about half of the time that we have proposed it. And in fact, I'll comment just on the diesel, for example. Many companies, as we've seen reported in the media, are announcing fuel surcharges to deal with higher fuel prices. Well, taking 4 cents off a litre is not going to change corporate decision-making on that. So we have our proposal, 25 cents, about $1,200 a year. Liberal proposal, 10 cents or 4 cents, and so just a few dollars, and not even till the end of the year.